Hello, this is Richard Wilson. Welcome to the Family Office Podcast. Today I'm excited to have with us Michael Scott from Cannapreneur Partners. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, Richard. Thanks for having us on. Much appreciated.
Sure. And just to kind of give a little background, could you maybe share when you first got connected to the Family Office Club and your background in the cannabis space?
Yeah, so let's see. It would have been, I think it was January 2018 that I came across your material online. And, it was about, probably, actually, I think it was 2017 when I came across your material. And we were in the middle of a fundraise in the cannabis industry. And honestly, you've got some amazing content out there. So the ebooks, I came across it, and then I found out about the network and ended up joining and becoming a member. So that's how I originally came across it. And honestly, I think I sent you an email after I was a member 4 or 5 months in that I signed up for your conference and learned what I learned. Our fundraise started going through the roof. And some of that was certainly because of what I implemented from the learnings.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And but more specifically about getting into the cannabis space, I want to ask you some questions that I think some people might be wondering whether they've heard one or two people speak at events, or maybe they know somebody in the space. And I want to get into some of those questions. But to give your answers in context, can you talk to us a little bit about Cannapreneur Partners, how that came to be, and what your depth of experience is in the cannabis space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been in the cannabis space for, going on 3 years. My background was as a private wealth advisor. So I had run my own wealth management shop. I used to be with Ameriprise. We spun out, launched our own wealth management business. And, I was at the time over the last 7 to 9 years, started expanding as an entrepreneur. We were launching businesses, working with amazing operators, and we would invest time in helping them strategically, but give the startup capital. And we were having a lot of fun with that, expanding as an entrepreneur while running the wealth management business. And then, in 2016, I was taking a sabbatical. I'd spent a lot of time studying, the cannabis industry as I was looking for the most explosive industry out there. And, the data was just compelling that this was an industry that, when I was looking at it at the time, I just saw what I felt to be a 90s tech boom coming. So, it was the entrepreneurial side that probably drove me to really look at the space. But ultimately, in the end, it was, seeing the firsthand benefits that cannabis had on my own mother was a really compelling component to actually drive me into the industry 2 feet in.
Sure, makes sense. And before we started recording this, we were talking about the surprising thing that there's actually a theme of doing good while doing well and being socially responsible within the space, and how that was interesting to me, because I think that those who are outside the space, don't operate in it, just see headlines in the Wall Street Journal or on TV every now and then, etc., might put it like either in a vice category or like a sin, business with cigarettes and guns and alcohol or something. But I know you're a family-oriented, health-oriented individual and an experienced business professional, has had several businesses and the wealth management practices you talked about. Can you talk to the socially responsible angle and that theme that you're seeing in the space?
I can, and and there certainly is stigma associated with the industry. When I was telling friends and family that I was considering getting into the space, a lot of them looked at me cross-eyed, thinking, "What? You got the successful business? You own all these other businesses." I think at the time I owned 7 businesses. And people were really concerned about, geez, what about your reputation, Mike? And so here's what I'll tell you: is the industry is riddled with stigma, and my sincere belief is that over the next 2 to 5 years, that stigma, a lot of it's going to be squashed. And as the education gets out there on what the industry is really about and the good that cannabis really does bring to the table, I think that'll change a lot of that skepticism. You mentioned, profits with purpose. That is certainly a mantra and a component of our business. And what I'll tell you is, that's been a philosophy of mine, is that I think good entrepreneurs, making money should be a byproduct of building a phenomenal business and providing a great service or product. And, profits with purpose is already baked into this industry. I mean, I can tell you there's a huge empowerment focus to kind of diversify the spread of wealth. There's a huge focus to help people that have been adversely impacted. And then the other thing that's really cool about this industry, Richard, is there's this cool component of just helping people from the grassroots up. And we're very passionate about entrepreneurism and leadership. And so we love being able to work with these passionate entrepreneurs that are just looking for an opportunity in life in a very, very explosive business.
Right. It makes sense. I mean, I agree. I think that it's interesting. People outside of the business world who ask for money often say, "Oh, you got to give back. But I agree with you. If you run your business the right way, you're giving back every day by treating your employees right, by compensating them fairly, by providing team members with upside, by delivering value to clients you're serving. If you're constantly taking, then you're probably not running your business the right way. So, it comes down to semantics if you get too worried about how people phrase, what you do for other people to do good. But, I agree with you for sure. So I want to jump into, maybe a lesson or two that you've learned about the cannabis space that others probably don't see on the surface of it. That's non-obvious, counterintuitive. It could be a lesson very specific about cannabis, or a lesson that was non-obvious just about investing in a fast-moving area, whether it's blockchain, opportunity zones, another niche area that like stem cells or cannabis. Do you have one you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that come to mind. I mean, number one, I think one thing about cannabis that I've noticed, I've now had the opportunity to participate in three industries: the wealth management or finance industry, fitness, and now cannabis. And I will tell you, I was used to a relatively fast-paced industry in my wealth management world. It has got nothing on the speed and the pace of the cannabis world. So one thing that was an adaptation for me, and I think for a lot tiptoeing in, is this industry moves at a fast pace. Now, partly because people are running around trying to mine the green gold. The other reason, though, is because there's so much uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty, funding uncertainty. People are just bouncing around and just trying to find their spot. So what I have found is, as an industry, if you want to capitalize on the best investments, you have to be willing to move fast, but do not sacrifice accuracy for speed. Meaning, if your due diligence process is 8 hours, get those 8 hours in, but do it fast. Don't spread it out over 6 weeks. Get it done in 2 to 3 if you can. So that's one thing that I've seen. The other thing is there is a component, and we all have to remember that this industry did operate illegally. So in the early days, I don't see it a whole lot anymore. But my first year into the industry, we really had to be focused on actually getting the very thorough background checks to make sure that people were on the up and up, because investors, you got to be cautious when you have investors investing in businesses, that they know exactly who they're investing with, etc. So that's another component that I would say. And then the other non-obvious, and you touched on it a little bit, is that there's a lot of good that this industry is doing, right? So I saw the money-making opportunity that satisfied my entrepreneurial side, but my belief is when you can connect an entrepreneur to a purpose, plus the money-making component, that's when the likelihood of success goes way up. When my brothers and I saw how cannabis helped our mother in truly this amazing way with her PTSD that was like a miracle. I mean, we had a horrible incident that happened, and we saw this be the only ailment that helped her with her PTSD. And it was, without exaggeration, Richard, it was like watching a miracle unfold before us. And when I saw that, I was literally like, wait a minute, this the world got this wrong. There's a boatload of good. And then I started reading and finding, whoa, Israel's leading the world in PTSD studies. And you know what? It's proving to save lives from these ex-military that are committing suicide. And so what I'm looking forward to is the world really seeing what's going on with cannabis and the good. And it's coming, Richard. Right now, I would predict that, I believe probably about 65 to 75% of the media out there, if not higher, is positive press on cannabis. And what I think is we're going to see even more at a higher rate, at a higher trajectory. The world will get educated. It's just going to take some time. And it used to be, by the way, the other way around. The media is doing a huge part to help transcend this industry. It used to be literally the polar opposite, based on, the data that was supposedly accurate that was put out there. So we're seeing rapid change.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. And I do think it's changing quickly, and we don't have time to dig into it in depth, but just the acceptance of medical cannabis treatment versus recreational is very high. And like we've talked about before, there's a huge future in medical treatments that are just, yet to get approved for different ailments, et cetera. But there's a ton of research going into that right now. So I think that's a high growth area that most people, even if you have a stigma around people for fun using cannabis, to relieve someone who's been in chronic crippling pain for a decade and be able to get them past that, or depression or some sort of, disease that is very, high pain, and be able to help relieve some of that is something that most people can get their brains around and not be so judgmental or have a big stigma about that use of it, I think, too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you look at the statistics, especially on the medical side, I mean, there's so many polls out there on what consumers, in terms of the consumer support on the medical side, but depending on which one you look at, Time magazines or some of the other ones out there, it's pretty much across the board. Between 90 to 96+% of Americans believe medical marijuana at this stage should be legal. Now, if you think about that, how often in polls do 90+% of people ever agree on any damn thing, right? So that is compelling, Richard. I mean, it really is compelling. And I'll tell you, like I said, my brothers and I, we're in that belief. We know why that 90% is there. There's just way too many people talking about, oh my gosh, it helped me with my cancer. It helps me with my anxiety. CBD does this. I mean, Richard, the story with my mom, I mean, it was the worst episode we'd ever seen her go through with PTSD. She let catatonic, quit breathing. She was actually at one of my businesses, my CrossFit gym. She fell back, hit the ground, wasn't breathing for a minute and a half while we're on the phone with 911. Wow. And I kid you not, and she suffers from numerous mental health issues. And so when the paramedics got there, she wasn't willing to go to the emergency room. She declined due to her paranoia. We get her back to my house. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know how to help her. My brothers and I are not trained psychologists or psychiatrists. And if you understand PTSD, it's this reliving of these horrible thoughts and fears in your mind, and you can't turn it off. And so she kept going through this episode at our house. Out of desperation, my brother says, Mike, let's try medical marijuana. We read all this about it. I went, grabbed it. I asked my mom if she'd try it. She did. I am not exaggerating, Richard. Within 5 minutes, I'm talking about a person that couldn't regulate her breathing, was an emotional wreck that went from that to not just baseline, but she actually went to a place where she was uplifted. She snapped out of it completely and was like, oh my gosh, one of my grandkids, they saw this, I got to give them a hug. It's safe to say we're absolutely convinced.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, interesting. Great. I mean, that's it's good that you found something that would help. And that was early on in the experience of being turned on to the cannabis space, or you were already turned on to it a bit, and that's what led to trying this, and that kind of reconfirmed your interest in it? Or how did that order of events go?
So I had been studying cannabis as an industry, and I had been studying billionaires for a lot of 2016 when I was on my sabbatical. That incident with my mom happened in December, and I was at the final stage of deciding, do I really want to jump into this industry? And when I saw that, that minute, it was like the second or third week of December, my decision was made. Within 3 weeks, I hired the top cannabis law firm that I could find, Vicente Cedarberg. They were on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. And basically, I retained them and said, here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your all-star entrepreneurs that are operators, that run businesses. I'm looking to help bring funding capital, my own, plus what else I can bring to the table with investors. And I'm also providing, business strategy, leadership knowledge, basically help get this business launched successful. And so the way the law firm responded was like, hey, perfect. This is a very immature industry and a new market here in Massachusetts. The cannabis market was really just getting started, 2.5, 3 years ago on the adult use side. And so what the law firm said is, the two main things that we believe a lot of our clients need right now is actually those two things. Literally, capital is probably the biggest thing this industry lacks in Massachusetts. And then number two, they said, hey, there's just a lot of operators that lack business experience. So your business background will be a perfect fit. Took me about 5 months to find them. I met a lot of players before, I wrote the check. But I did find them, and they're all stars. We were pumped to find them.
Great. That leads into my next question. With every type of investment, typically everyone says, the team is most important. But there's a couple challenges with that. Usually it's a very subjective thing, the team. What is credible? What is, a great team versus not, where a number of years track record is tangible and their returns are tangible. So in your space, when you're looking for great, quote unquote, teams or a great leader, how do you define that in a way that you've found is effective for the cannabis space?
So we are really big on vetting teams, specifically, management and leadership on a team. We think that's one of the most important areas to vet. So here's what I look for. Number one, we call it TOS, track record of success. Do the leaders and the key operators, entrepreneurs have a consistent and compelling track record of success? Because Richard, our business model is relatively simple. We will scour the world for the 1% entrepreneurial operator outliers to actually partner with, and that's why we're called Cannapreneur partners. We partner with the operators, the entrepreneurs, and we'll also partner with the investors to help pull it all together. But, in order to find those 1% players, we're looking for that track record of success. So that's key. We're looking for alignment amongst that leadership team. Are they really aligned in what they're actually trying to solve? So if I met with the CEO and I say, hey, what's the mission of this company? Ultimately, what does success look like over the next 2-3 years? If that answer sounds very different than the chief operating officer, guess what? There's going to be an issue. That shows that there's a lack of alignment. So we'll look for alignment. We'll look at communication style. We'll look at, hey, is this team actually having real communication, real candid conversations? Are they making tough decisions? In the workplace, a lot of times businesses aren't as candid as they should be. So, we'll look at that. And then here's one thing we'll look at that's actually very specific to the cannabis industry. There's a lot of teams that are plagued with this, and I look for it because this is something that we don't like to see in teams to fund, there's, what I call people that are 1 foot into the industry and 1 foot out, right? So I didn't do that. Look, a lot of people from the wealth management space or financial services, that's what they're doing. They're kind of tiptoeing in. And so I find that to be very ineffective, right? Because what happens is you get players that they see this green goal, they want to participate, but oh man, it's cannabis. I don't want to risk all of these other things. I got my securities license. I've got all these things. And so what happens is the uncertainty kind of creates a scenario where people will be 1 foot in the cannabis industry, 1 foot out. Right. And so we were really looking for teams where there's full commitment, where people are fully entrenched. Yep, they get it's cannabis. The stigma's not even in their mind. They've got to run a machine and create operational excellence.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you brought that up because, it's a reputational, what are other people going to think thing. It's a, how do I sleep at night and be okay with myself if it's a new idea and you're new to kind of putting it on and seeing if you want that identified, with yourself. And this is kind of a new experience in terms of a major class of a substance becoming legal and mainstream within our lifetime. It's really a pretty unique experience. So I think that a lot of people just don't know how to deal with that on the investor and an operational level. And I've seen exactly what you're talking about just in running the family office club and seeing people who are kind of active in the space. Some people don't wear it on the sleeve, but then if it gets brought up, they're like, oh yeah, we've got 4 investments in that area. But they don't say it sometimes unless they're in that circle of people that know about the space. You know?
Oh, without a doubt. Well, the stigma is definitely there. It's like if, as a team, if we all commit that we're going to, do something and post something on our social media channels, as opposed to people commenting publicly, I get the text messages from them, is what happens, right? Because it has a lot of stigma, right? So people are, and this is why I think we've got a unique edge, Richard, in what we're doing, right? Because we know that and see that, and we're building a machine and a net to capture that, because people want to get in. We're just one of the first here on the East Coast to boldly say, hey, we're doing it. We're putting our brand out there. And you know what? We're happy to talk to both investors and operators in this space because we think we can make some magic happen. And by the way, we've already done it. What we've done our first 2-3 years in Massachusetts, I think it's pretty damn phenomenal if I can toot this team's horn. We've found some amazing operators. We grabbed some amazing market share in this state. We've got businesses that are launching. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a wild ride, but it's been a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess my last question is really about investors thinking through with any fast, hot-moving space. It could be cannabis, it could be blockchain, it could be a real estate space that's overheated and everyone's fighting over deals. But especially when it's a relatively new area of expertise, when you're looking at valuations that are either high or they get high as soon as the revenue is positive and a real team has been built out, it's not just an idea. How do you conduct thorough due diligence that leads to high conviction when a lot of the groups might have 6 months operating history or a 1.5 years operating history? Maybe they have no experience in the industry. You talked about a trend of success earlier when talking about evaluating teams. So obviously the team part is very central to this question, but are there any other things that you've learned about conducting due diligence in such a fast moving / high valuation space like this?
Yeah, so I've learned a ton in the last 2-3 years. In fact, cannabis is such a intriguing, fast-moving, and complex industry. I've learned more as an entrepreneur in this industry than any other, and I would also say over any other 3-year period of time in my professional career. There's a lot of high valuations in cannabis right now. Part of that is because there's such high growth potential. That being said, I wish here on the East Coast I could find businesses that have 2 to 4 years of operating experience. It's such an immature industry. The vast majority of businesses that I'm seeing don't even have 6 months of operating track record behind them. But yet we'll see big valuations sometimes, right? So, how we address that is what we do is we'll get in the trenches and just talk to the operators, and I'll tell you what we find. I'm going to say a good 75% of the time, they didn't even know how they came up with the valuation. So a lot of times they need help. And believe it or not, the cannabis industry, if you approach them in the right collaborative way, they're actually pretty easy to work with. The thing that doesn't work is if you come at the cannabis industry and you try to talk in Wall Street language, private equity lingo, it's like two worlds colliding. It just won't work. So what we do is we sit down with the operators and we let them know, look, we're on the same side of the fence as you. We only want to partner with businesses that we're aligned with, and we're absolutely confident we can help them. But we're absolutely confident 2 things. Number one, they were already going to be successful. But number 2, we can boost that success to a whole nother level. So we'll sit down with them, try to understand how they came up with their valuation, and share a different perspective. And believe it or not, a lot of times you can have real conversations and get to a place that's a more balanced perspective on valuations. But we also, our process, we have a very deep business designed due diligence process we call BVOS, which is called Business Vetting on Steroids. We got the funny acronym there that works in the cannabis industry, but we have a very thorough process. And if we get through the preliminary vetting and we get to that step in our process, it's very, very likely we're going to spend between 15 to 30 hours with these operators. And we're going to understand their business plan. We're going to understand their core values, their goals. Before we're going to deploy our capital, we're going to know the insides, the outs, and we're going to make sure we're aligned on all things, including valuation. But I think that our process is key. I find with cannabis, the standard vetting process, Richard, is this. Wow, this looks good. This seems to make sense. It's like the lift of prohibition. Let's listen to a pitch. Oh, 2 or 3 of my buddies got in. Okay, maybe I should come in. And that's really, especially with cannabis, you got to do a lot more than that, because there's so many, different nuances to this industry and risks that if you avoid the right risks, you can have immensely big ROI.
Right. I love that you said that, because exactly what I hear. So many, maybe not family offices that are formalized, but so many private investors that are worth 5 to 25 to 30 million that really don't have any type of a family office, and they see like one deal that's in the operating business side, like every 2 to 5 months. Maybe they see 2 cannabis deals the whole year or something. I've heard those exact words come out of people's mouth, where there's there's a CBD company and it's just an idea, but he's got a great idea, right. And I believe in him, and the valuation is at 5 million. He thinks it's going to be 10 million valuation a year, and then like that is pretty much their due diligence, just kind of like bouncing that off a few of their friends, and then somebody comes in with them on the deal, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll take a flyer on it. Like let's do it, right?" And they're usually busy guys, and it may or may not work out, but it's funny.
So Richard, here's my take, right? There's a lot of family offices out there. I'm not trying to knock family offices. There's some out there that we've learned immense from that do a phenomenal job with private placement due diligence. But I will tell you, a lot of them, it's exactly what you described. They might be seeing 1 or 2 cannabis deals a year because a buddy mentioned something. I got to tell you, your chances of getting the right cannabis business funded and making great ROI, if you're seeing that type of deal flow, it's like throwing a dart and just expecting to hit the bullseye every time. It probably isn't going to happen. What we tell our investors is we believe our machine, our process, it helps reduce significant risk in cannabis, and cannabis has enough risk already, right? And part of how we do that, Richard, you hit it right on the head. It's about deal flow. Right now, we're already seeing 30 to 40 cannabis deals per month is what our analytics are showing. With the internet, with all the social media, the web work that we've done, the work that you and your teams help with, I mean, it's been immense. We're trying to drive that to 100. I think we can be there in the next 2 to 3 months. But here's our deal, is if we can see 100 a month, we want to be in a position over time to find one phenomenal deal per month. And just think about that for a second. If you're getting 1 a year, what's the likelihood of success versus 100 a month? You know what I mean? When you have 80, 90, 100 dates to prom versus one choice, the outlook can look very different.
I couldn't agree more. And just between our family office club, investor summits, workshops, and then our investor relations agency, the pitchdex.com, we're getting a couple deals a month, which is not a lot. And every time I meet with the family office, like this morning, I spent an hour and a half with a $500 million family. And I told them, look, you have to find that laser focus, because after you look at 30, 50, 70, or 100 deals, everything changes, and then you can put them in order, and the top 1% is actually meaningful. And whether you're listening to this as a private equity fund or real estate fund, or as a little private investor, or as a big $1 billion plus family office, I think that's true. Everyone needs to be aligned and integrated throughout the whole organization and pointed in the right direction. If you don't have a clear direction and you're not sure about what you're trying to be smart at investing in, you might as well just trust somebody who's best in class to be getting you diversification in a smart way, and not spreading your money randomly, unless you really have a trusted best in class, advisor to help you navigate a space. I couldn't agree with that more. And we emphasize that at our events. We emphasize that with clients, like we did this morning in the meeting. So I'm glad that kind of came up unplanned here, because I just think that's so central to doing well in direct investments, is just seeing enough flow to actually know what is a average deal or a better than average deal.
Absolutely. I mean, on the investor side, again, as Cannapreneur partners, we like to think we partner with both investors and the entrepreneurial operators. And, on the investor side, seeing that deal flow helps protect them because we have so much more choice. On the operator side, it's not just capital, but we go further, right? We want to bring capital to these 1% all-stars, but it's also strategic direction, it's systems, it's leadership, purpose-driven leadership. So we think that, we want to deploy capital, but we also want to protect the capital and work with these operators to be phenomenally successful. And that's a win-win-win across all three parties, us, the operators, as well as the investor. And that's really our value proposition. And I will tell you, Richard, we've launched a $150 million fundraise. We are seeing a lot of crazy valuations out there, and we're seeing a lot of need for these operators to just even understand the basics of how to run and do a fundraise, how to get launched in the industry. It's a great time to be in because there's a lot of need out there, and there's a lot of upside ROI potential as well.
Right, for sure. Great. Well, if anyone wants to learn more about connecting with you, maybe they've got a deal, maybe they're a cannabis entrepreneur, or they're interested in figuring out how your kind of a holding company works with cannabis investments, where's the best place to learn more and get some details on that, connect with your team?
I would say the best place would be, reaching out on cannapreneurpartners.com. So that has all of our contact information. You can also find us in social media. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. So we're on most of the major channels, and you can certainly contact us as well by phone. But, there is a one-pager on our site that we actually have a fair amount of investors that will go online and download it, but there's a one-pager that we created that basically, in a nutshell, in one simple page, it's an infographic that explains everything that what we do.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that, Michael. And I think it'd be great to have you back in the future to talk about the medical space specifically, or go through a bunch of statistics and numbers and give that high-level view of the forest education. I'm sure there's a couple other topics that we could be covering. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming Family Office Club events.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having us on, Richard. Much appreciated.
Take care.